Okay, so yes, my last video, the microphone was very low. Hopefully, this is better. Um, Thank you for the feedback, and I re-listened to it, and yes, it was very low. So hopefully, this helps. Um, Today, I'm going to read one more post or entry from this journal before I move on to my next one. But so this was towards the end. I had finished my time at the hostel where I had lived for 2 months in Giardini Naxos, which was a wonderful time. I highly recommend anyone who wants to do a work exchange to do it because it's the best way to interact in whatever country you're living in. For example, at the hostel, I had Gianni, who the hostel was named after, and Graziella, who were like my Italian parents. And it was just a great experience and just meeting people from all over the world. Um, yeah, so then after I was done at the hostel, I did like a 10-day whip around Italy. Like I went to Syracuse and then I went up north to Sorrento and I went to the Amalfi Coast for a day trip. I went to Pompeii for a night, I believe, or a couple of nights. I went to Rome, I went to Venice, I went to Florence. It was wonderful, but it's very exhausting, as you can imagine. So this was August 6th, 2023. I'm coming to the end, although I don't want to think about that yet. I remember when I asked Miles, who was this person that I had met in Australia on my travels, what his favorite part of the day was while we were at the beach, and he replied, "The day's not over yet." I realized how I tend to think in past tense, rushing to the part when I reflect on the journey, not just be in the experience. I have left Venice. Now I'm sitting at the train station. Um, yeah, and then this part was kind of what I was noticing with myself is, especially when I was on social media still, I had trouble having an experience, being in the experience. Most of the time I was thinking about how can I post this? How can I show other people what I'm doing? And I wasn't living it for myself, which really kind of robbed myself of what I was doing. But of course, you sometimes you only learn these lessons through experiencing it, and then having kind of the juxtaposition. Because at this point, a couple of my friends had gotten rid of their accounts, their social media accounts, and they were kind of just sharing their reflections of how that felt for them. And so I wasn't there yet. I was sharing a lot. I was creating little video reels set to music of my travels. And of course, still enjoying them, but maybe not fully immersed and still having this bit of like optimization of experience in a sense. And then this entry were just some worries that I wrote down. So I think writing these worries helped a lot because instead of them looping in my mind, which is what tends to happen or tended to happen, writing them down kind of just made them like in the physical realm so that they're not just clouds, like clouds that feel like are getting stuck actually. Worries. Not cooking for myself. Somehow for 2.5 months I kept myself fed. um my partner at the time, he loved to cook, and if I was cooking would critique, and so I just kind of let him do it. But during this time I got to cook, by myself. And then sleeping arrangement. Are Alex and I going to sleep together? Are things going to be awkward with him? Is there going to be a shift with my friends? Is my life going to go back to monotony and routine? Will I be overwhelmed by my clothes because I was living out of a luggage? Am I going to have enough money to support my life at home? Um, yeah, and it's interesting to read this question of monotony and routine. I think that, now I really prize the everyday. something that had happened with me is, when you suffer a lot, which I did, I had a lot of anxiety at this point. You kind of get a tunnel vision and you're not really seeing how each day is a miracle in its own way and different, no matter, even if you're going to the same workplace, even if your routine is the same, it will always be a bit different and you will be a bit different. But at this point in my life, I wasn't seeing things this way. And so this is kind of the monotony and routine. And I think this was a lot of what played into the fear with my relationship was, at the time, we weren't really meeting as partners or as lovers in a sense. It was like roommates, but with resentment in a sense. Like my partner would rush through dinner and then would go to the office, his computer office, and because we had a spare room, and that was kind of saw my life being like this for years. And I think when this happens, it's usually when you kind of need to reassess, like you're kind of telling yourself something like it's something feels off. And this is kind of the getting out of the comfort zone, because I think our egos, they like the comfort zone because there's predictability, and it makes a lot of sense why we would like predictability, because even if when we were developing as humans, like the survival part of our brain would want to go to the same source for food, it makes a lot of sense. But at this point I had talked to someone who I met her actually when I was in Sorrento, which, like, this is why traveling is so wonderful, because it could be very serendipitous in this way. I was by myself and I asked these girls to take a picture of me. And like these two women later, we met up for a drink. And then when I was in Rome, one of the women, she had lived in Santa Barbara. She went to college in the US, but she went to international schools when she was younger. And so when I was in Rome, I messaged her because she lived there. And she was saying to me, you should work at an international school. She went to an international school in the Philippines, and she said she had a lot of American teachers. And she said, Asian parents are great. They really respect their teachers. And so when I had gotten back from Italy, I just had this in my mind. I was like, this is my time for my dream that I wanted to live abroad. And so I applied to the school in Chiang Mai, where I live now, and it was a play-based learning school. I think this was actually the only school I applied to be honest. And I started having interviews, and then I was hired and began the visa process. It's going there. And yeah, and then a couple months later, I found myself, I triangulated before I moved here. I looked to see where would be a place I could live super close so I could walk just to my job. And I triangulated like the apartment I live in now, which I've lived for 2 years. And that's kind of set this new part of the journey, which I will get more into in the upcoming videos. So thank you for watching. And to my 2 subscribers, thanks for subscribing.